Okay, I'm going to start off just giving some definitions of cults, and then I'm going to get into John of God, which is a cult from Brazil that I was fascinated with, and Nexium, of course, and I may talk again a little bit about some of the other are sexually deviant cults, including Children of God, which is now called the Family. All right, so, and of course, my alma mater, Sarah Lawrence. I want to talk about the father, what is his name? Larry Berg, I think that's his name, who, it's crazy, had a cult for 10 years with his daughter and all her college friends. Started on campus and then was moved to a friend's apartment in New York City. He basically took over this guy's apartment for years. The whole story is completely crazy, and now he's locked up for, like, I think his sentence was 60 years and he was already in his early 60s. So, but first of all, most cults lead with, when they're doing recruitment, they lead with wanting to generate a feeling of veneration. What is that? It's a feeling of deep respect or awe, reverence for someone or something, honoring a person with great secret wisdom, or somebody who has access to holy knowledge that could better your personal life or catapult whatever cause, or whatever you are devoting your life to. Sometimes that's religious, sometimes it's political. Most of these organizations have a pet cause, right? John of God's was healing. He thought he was basically like like John the Baptist or Jesus, or like a prophet who, like, he thought he was channeling, the Holy Spirit to heal people. I'll get into that. Anyway, veneration. Okay. Also, it could be believing wholeheartedly, even if you have reservations, you cast those aside, in a particular mentor or wise teacher, elder, or leader in a high position. Many times these people are called gurus. So much so that you feel like whatever this experience is, you can't miss out on it, and it's going to be like with that fear of missing out. Like, if you don't take this opportunity to be part of this thing, whatever their name is, fill in the blank, that you will somehow be missing out, and like the train's going to leave without you, and that they have this valuable next step of your higher self that basically could be unlocked if you follow their direction and you learn to sort of I don't know what you want to call it, like block out your own conscience, like whatever that little voice in you that says, I don't know about this, or that doesn't seem right. Like, you have to be willing to accept the fact that you're joining a sect, a group, a following, an organization that has a communal goal, much like, and you will have to sacrifice your own individuation for that. And that is key, that if you don't do that, you'll only be on like the outskirts. Like maybe you'll be somebody who takes one of their seminars, or you know what I mean. But you'll never be like in the inner circle, and you'll never get that special information or knowledge, or get to do great things that they're promising you. They do this thing called data mining, where it's a little bit like love bombing with these organizations, where it kind of reminds me of this job a friend of mine got offered, where it's like her job would be to do research for possible donors for the university, right? So that would be her job, is to get all the information together, everything about them, finances, personal life, like that, anything public, and if possible, anything somewhat private that was relative. But that's what these groups do when they vet somebody. Because usually, remember I said before, most people don't go join a cult, right? The cult comes and finds them. They basically have pre-run information, data sourcing about you to their leader, and decided, whether it's 2 people or a small group of higher ups, that you're a good target. Like you have something valuable to offer that it's worth going after you for. So I did do some research on this guy. He joined the NXIVM cult, and he was fascinating. He was South African, and he had done a lot of documentaries about apartheid in South Africa, and he was very passionate about this. And the leader of NXIVM, I don't have his name right here, but I have it. Hold on. Let's see. I got really not a flattering picture of him too. NXIVM cult leader Keith Raniere. Oh, there he is. I don't know if that's a mugshot of him. And this was the compound. So now NXIVM their front was self-help, or, enlightenment, new age, wellness. But it was a cover for a sex cult, basically, sex trafficking. And women were treated separately than men, and were in a separate area where they were, or separate group in addition to the main one, where they were branded, and then like I said, trafficked, and there was a hierarchy, and then of course they were part of his harem. That's what they do. But what's my point? In order to be considered a cult by these researchers that I've been trusting the most, Margaret Singer and LaLeche, you need a self-appointed persuasive person, like I said, who claims to offer a mission or a lifestyle that is a special privilege. And that's why Bernie Madoff was like the king of this technique. It's like a great manipulation technique, where it's like you basically offer people special access to be part of his whatever this group that's getting like high returns. They're in a special they're a special group that he has hand selected, that are getting higher returns than everybody else. They're getting extra money, and people would like vie and compete to be selected by Bernie Madoff, which is kind of ironic when we know, of course, how that all went. But the whole point of that is to make it so, it's like you're the friend of somebody who's in it. They'll recommend you or whatever, but it's like you have to have something to offer. There has to be something special about you that would make you basically a good victim. But but the whole point is it's a limited offer. He's only taking like 50 people, and he already has 42, or you know what I mean. Like, they make it so it seems like you're getting into this special club that like no one else has access to. Like, you're selected, and that's part of the manipulation, because since you feel like you're in the know more than everybody else in the organization, that you have like a special leverage than everybody else, or your status is higher and your benefits are greater than everybody else. That is how they'll target you. And like for this filmmaker, they targeted him by watching all his films, doing a shitload of research on him, and basically soft selling him, because they knew that he was altruistic, and what he needed was more resources to make more of the same documentaries that he was making. Like, he needed his art to even increase be more widespread, so his cause would be, his political cause, or human rights cause would be, civil rights, be seen by more people. But he needed more money, more visibility. He needed people in higher places to be aware of his work, and so they knew that. So when they approached him, they really did a fantastic job of basically selling him his own dream. So they talk to you in a way where it's like, whatever is the greatest desire in your heart, whatever you've always wanted, but you feel like you're almost gonna attain it, but you probably won't at the final, like, there's gonna be some steps that you're not gonna have the funds for, you're not gonna have the access for. There's something about your vision or your it becomes your identity, really, because it's like I said, most of these people are social justice oriented. So the best way to get them to join these groups is to give them the promise of spiritual redemption, or helping others in this great way. Like, because everybody's always worried, I know I am, like when you donate money to a cause, it's like you always wonder, like, do they really give it to the right people, or like they keep it for themselves, or like to keep some of it for themselves? Like, what really goes on in some of these organizations? But it's like, this way you would have a more hands-on inside scoop on what's going on, so you would really know 100% that you were making a difference and doing something for your purpose in life that was actually on the right track. And so it's like, you need them to help you achieve this goal of yours. They need you because of course they wanted him to use his skills to promote their organization. Well, the front of their organization, their real organization, is always, like I said before, in the underbelly. It's always hidden. It's never, it's what they sell or what they promote themselves as, and then there's what's underneath it, which is usually money laundering, sex trafficking, abuse, cohesive control, just everything. Like unsound moral practices with underage children, like there's like a plethora of things that they have going on in the background, and all of them are based on, one, stroking the ego of whoever the leader is or the higher ups in the organization, increasing their power, status, and visibility, and also allowing them to basically get away with whatever their double life secret, whatever they're doing behind the scenes. You know, they need people to, pull strings for them or get them in places, even if they have a lot of money. That doesn't mean they know the right people. So it's like they try to collect people who can open doors for them. So it's a whole process. And John of God is an interesting segue into that. Okay, this guy was a Brazilian spiritual healer. And I'm sad to say, sadly admit that I was obsessed with John of God. And he was on Oprah, and I don't think he was in Oprah's live studio, but it's like she sent her crew down there and they filmed one of his live performances, and it was like that all you saw were like people traveling on buses, cars, walking in droves to this temple of his in Brazil, and they all were wearing white. It was like and he was this supposed spiritualist who had a healing touch, and of course some saint or whatever had he'd had some vision, and some saint had given him special powers or whatever. And so somehow he would do these very public showings where he would kind of act like Jesus, really, and get people to get up out of their wheelchairs, or he would supposedly heal tumors. He would do all kinds of bizarre spiritual cleansings, and they would show this stuff, and it would almost like some of it looked a little bit like Pentecostal or like Santeria or something, where it's like it was just over the top, where people were becoming overcome by the Holy Spirit, and then he would always do this thing where he put his hand here and almost do like a dry baptism, and then his main thing was he set his hands on you, right, and then healed you. I mean, I don't know why I was so taken by this. I guess because I'm Catholic, I don't know, but I was obsessed with this what is it called, the Miracle, Do You Believe in Miracles, this episode of Oprah's. And it's ironic because I didn't even have my disability at that time. I mean, this is like 20, I don't know. He was arrested in 2018. I can't remember how long this shit went on. I want to say 2012. So I wasn't even disabled at that point. I don't know why I thought I needed this guy, but I was like, oh, I want to go down there and go on his pilgrimage, and see this happen, because it had that sort of electricity in the air when you saw him doing these ceremonies where and there were all these testimonials. I mean, people just went on and on, sick children, people with epilepsy, like all this crap. It looked real. It looked like he had some sort of, like I said, like a healing power, who knows where from. And it looked legitimate. And if you're into that kind of thing, which I am, so I guess I would have been a perfect victim for John of God. So thank goodness I didn't have the money or the time back then to, take a break from my job and go down to Brazil. So I'm glad that I didn't get scammed. So awesome. But turns out that this amazing, and his real name is not John of God. It's this long Spanish name that I cannot pronounce whatsoever. I'm not even going to try, but you can look it up. Let's see. He was accused of sexual abuse spanning decades. 300 women turned him in, convicted in multiple criminal cases. He was treated, former followers described that they trusted him implicitly. Any criticism from outsiders was dismissed. The culture of the organization made it almost impossible to speak up over him because he had a lot of power in that area locally, with local authorities. And people traveled from so far to see him. I can't pronounce his name. Jorge Teixeira de Faria. I don't know. They don't call it a per se official cult, but it was determined to have cult-like characteristics. And it followed the criteria for a cult academically, as it had a charismatic, unquestioned leader, psychological or social control over the members, isolation from critics, exploitation, financial, sexual, emotional, and discouragement or shame if you left or talked in any negative way. And a lot of these organizations have like big money to like basically ruin your life. I'm not talking about John of God now, I'm talking about NXIVM, where they actually had lawyers and teams that if you left them against their will, they knew, you were privy to a lot of information they didn't want to be publicly known. So they would tear your life apart. They would make your reputation crap. They would drag you through bogus court cases, trying to make it look like you stole funds or like, you did something you weren't supposed to, and so therefore like trying to make your name or reputation somebody untrustworthy, so they would be not found out for what they were doing. And the bigger the cult, the more money and the more press or lawyer team or whatever they have to, and they even would like go as far as strong arming people and like really threatening their families. I mean, it was like a true whistleblower situation if you were to expose yourself to them fearing what you were going to say. All right. Which other ones was I going to talk about? Okay. NXIVM, he said he thought that that leader wasn't your average sort of, he was charismatic, but it wasn't the kind of overt malignant narcissist. Like he didn't have some of the characteristics as some of the other ones. He was a lot more subtle and acted humble in public. And he had, like I said, in many of these organizations, there's a woman underneath him who was like basically crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's for everything he got away with. There always seems to be like, in most of these organizations, there's some woman in power who is directly beneath the main leader, and it's like they are like the cover-up person, and they do it. And even like with the Sarah Lawrence cult, same thing. One of the students, I want to say her name was Isabella, I don't know, there's several students involved, and she basically worked with Larry to at one point torture one of the other students, like put them in a chair naked and threaten to waterboard them and do like cruel things to them because of them. They were using her for years, forcing her to be an escort, and then they had damning photos of her, of course, that they would blackmail her with if she didn't do what they wanted. But that also happened with a lot of other NXIVM, the women. Part of your entrance into this subgroup or whatever is they would want explicit photos of you, and then of course they would use them against you or use them as promotional materials. And so this poor girl, it was over, I think it was over $1 million after all was said and done that she made for Larry and his, like, whoever the woman was helping him. And she would have to turn all her money over, or, threaten emotional, psychological, physical abuse. And he also, Larry Berg was one, he put cameras everywhere. And this is 10 years this shit went on. So when they were on campus, and then even when they went to New York City, and he took all the students with him to live in a small apartment, and it was just basically psychologically terrorizing them all the time. In sessions where he would break them down to help them with their issues, like basically he tried to be like a torture negotiator type, I don't know, life coach / psychiatrist on steroids, where he would like try to pull out, I mean, this is like classic cult shit. Try to pull out your repressed childhood memories, or focus on some horrific event that happened in your childhood that you hadn't addressed yet. And then he would figure out your particular insecurities, target those, and then he would just wear you down. And then he would get them sleep deprived, keep them on the phone all night. He would have them sleep with each other. Of course, he had two of the women's younger girls, one over 21, sleeping with him. He was always engaged to one of them. And, he did a lot of that, what do they call it? Fake, whatever, future faking, where he promised the one he was engaged to they were going to have this Disney wedding. And then he basically, like, took over her family, her brother and sister and parents' lives, and just tried to just blame them for all kinds of crazy shit. And then, much like I've talked before about this documentary called Bad Vegan, and it's about this restaurant owner, vegan obviously. She was super famous in the early 90s, and it was very avant-garde. It was like one of the newer trends at that time. These particular restaurants that served, the high end and celebrities and stuff. And she had whoever this guy she married, who was obviously a psychopath. He took over her mind and basically got her to not pay her employees for months and tell them all these lies about stuff, and then got her to believe, like, she really got into like cognitive dissonance. And then he would send her all these different parts of the country, like randomly, by herself and her dog, and then tell her she had to go meet these shadow associates or whatever. And then that there, of course, just like Larry Berg, there were people after them. All these people always have, like, because they're so important, they all, and because they have a personality disorder that's untreated, or some kind of spiritual psychosis, they're just grandiose narcissists, having a field day with all the power and people they're controlling, who are all saying yes to them, submitting to whatever cuckoo stuff they're doing. they take over the finances, break you down as a person, isolate you, which is what he did to her. Because he kept sending her on all these weird little missions that weren't even true, and then promising her like eternal life, or her dog eternal life. I don't know. And I mean, basically, what happens is the things that you would believe, well, the things you wouldn't believe when you first became part of these organizations or under these people's control, the things that happen later on after they've broken you down, not let you communicate with anybody else, made it so you're speaking their special language and doing all kinds of weird shit you would have never thought you would ever do. And, you know, you're separated from your old life, and then you're only around other people who do the exact same thing. So there's all this sort of camaraderie around the inner group, and now you can't get along with people in the outside group. And then they also just dismantle your common sense, or your ability, your critical thinking, and you'll get punished or given tasks that are unfair, or have to write these big confessionals, which honestly, when I was in drug rehab in my 20s, we had to write confessionals, so, as a punishment if we broke a rule. So I don't know what that was about, but confessionals are weird. It's like you have to like basically stand up in front of a huge group of people and read this essay about everything you've done wrong and confess and sort of agree that you need some kind of, you know, punishment to absolve you of whatever you did, and you know, and then the next night it'll be something else and you'll have to do it again. But I think confessionals are just so creepy, because it's like, who are these people that are like asking you to, like, are you on trial, or like did you commit a crime? Like, who is like has enough power over you that it's gonna make you confess things sometimes that you never even did? But they get you addicted to them, hooked on them, and then they'll do all these strategies, and then shame will come into it. And see, like what Larry Berg did, he had all these cameras, and he would constantly harass these students, and like, especially sexually, and like insist that they had these past sex lives that they didn't have, like they slept with their teachers in college or whatever, you know, like, and he would just berate them, and like just would not let up until they finally just started saying, yes, I did, yes, because they want him to shut up, and they want to stop being in an argument with someone they're scared of and who has power over their daily lives. I mean, he was able to get his fiance had a doctorate in psychology, a doctor, to believe that she couldn't leave the apartment and even go buy a sandwich at a corner market by herself. Like, that she had to be watched 24/7, had to take one of the other students with her as a guard because she couldn't be left alone. I mean, and it's like, and then what they do is, if later you say, that's not true, I didn't have sex with my teacher, you know, like, that's not, they'll say, oh, I have the footage right here, you know, looks like you confessed. You know, again, it's that confess stuff. So, like, that's very effective. So, apparently blackmail and wearing people down and repeating stuff and throwing huge fits like a big toddler baby, and being angry, and then also getting in with like everybody has any kind of authority in your life, and getting them to believe them, not you, and that, you know, you're emotionally overwhelmed, you're not yourself. Maybe they say you're suicidal. They try to drive you to suicide. I mean, it's like, but literally many of these people always have like people are after them, or they act like they're like being hunted by the Secret Service or something, or like they have some big debt that somebody's going to come after them and collect. It's like, and most of the time it's not true. They're just delusional. And times when it is true, it's like, obviously they probably did a whole bunch of crap that they deserve that shit. But they're not going to pay for it or take accountability. Well, no. Like, that's why they have this wonderful group, so that they can shift that onto somebody else. Okay, so let's see. Who else is I going to talk about? The Sarah Lawrence thing is crazy, because it's like, it just went on so freaking long. 10 years is a long time. I mean, I can't imagine how much internal psychological damage you could do in a full 10 years of breaking down a person and remolding them to exactly who you want them to be. And then, of course, you take all the things that coerce them into doing, which are not ethical, and then you use them against them. I mean, it's just like, oh, I know what I was trying to say. I was trying to say before, like, the things people do in these cults, or even in some of these psychopathic, sociopathic, malignant, narcissistic relationships, or narcissistic family dynamics. It can be the family, the parents. The things that people actually end up doing in service of these people who they are used to be looking up to, and now are spending all their time people pleasing, trying to beg for their forgiveness for whatever slight they've supposedly done. It's like, the things everybody ends up doing later are things that, like, a few years down the road, if they had heard of anybody just, they had been given an example of somebody when they first joined the organization. Oh, so-and-so, goes out and has sex with other men, even, because her husband tells her to, and brings back the money. I mean, like, everybody would be like, what are you talking about? Like, it's like, but what happens in these organizations, they own your persona. Like, they break you down so much that your ability to fight back and like, who you were at the beginning could have probably, put some kind of kibosh into their plan. But by the time you're so messed up, and there's the secrecy, and there's like, well, who would ever believe me, and because, once again, I always say, nobody ever thinks they're joining a cult, or getting involved in a relationship that's going to mentally destroy them. Absolutely nobody ever goes into something and it's like, yeah, that's what's happening. It's a slow burn process. So that's one of the things to always look at, is the chain of events that get somebody from going to somebody who would absolutely never cross certain lines, to somebody who crosses them quite frequently and is still terrified that it's not good enough, and that they still have to prove themselves more, and somehow feels like it's all their fault because they fell for it. Because by that time they realize they're they're getting like a gut feeling, or they're doing so many things they don't agree with, that they're like, this is not the life I thought I was going to have. Becoming part of it, like, this is not the marriage I thought I said yes to, like, this is incongruent, this is not right. It's like by that time you're so far into it, it's the sunken fallacy principle where you've already thrown your whole regular life away. You're already fully into this thing. You've wasted all these years and given up all these things. And for you to psychologically face the fact that basically you voluntarily messed up your own self and your future, it's so upsetting, so soul crushing that people would rather just blame themselves and think they maybe don't understand it and stay in confusion, because first of all, they don't feel like they can go back to who they were and have a regular life anymore, because I know that from when I was 14 and like I said, I was involved with a much older man to get away from my mother, 5.5 years older, and I was only 14. And I know that from that relationship. It's like, once you hit a certain point, you're like, I could never tell anyone what really happened. I mean, my thoughts then were, if anybody knew, friends, my family, like school, anybody knew what was really going on, like, they would be disgusted with me. They would think I was an idiot, like a fool, like, or just sexually deviant or something. Like, they would just think things about me that are not true. So it's like, well, whatever. Like, a lot of fucked up shit happened. But it's like, I never wanted it to be like that, and it was never my choice for it to be like that. And that's, of course, the struggle when you're underage. That's why they don't want you, like, that's why, there's laws against that, because you're so persuaded by someone who's older and an authority figure that's when those kind of decisions that wreck your life are made. But it's like, my whole point is that I felt at that time, I remember when I was about 16, feeling like I wanted to get out of it so bad. I hated my life, hated it. And I didn't even get away from my mother, didn't even work. The whole thing was I did it all for nothing. And I just thought, I can never tell anybody the truth. Like, there's nobody I could ever tell this to who would accept me. Like, nobody is going to accept this. And everyone's going to think it's my fault. And I can't take it back. I can't go back in time and not have done these things. Like, I'm ruined. I've ruined myself. And then you have to live with that. And it's like a horrendous, and that's where drugs and alcohol come in, or, it's poor life decisions, because it's too great of a weight to bear. Like, to face yourself after you've been manipulated by a true, I don't even know how to describe it. Somebody who truly knows what the fuck they're doing to do that to somebody. And you've done things that you never would have done, and it's all said and done. It's like, I think it's the isolation. I think it's the shame, and it's just the fear of other people finding out, and what they would think of you, and how much you would be socially ostracized or considered tainted or not worth anything, or just that you got played. Nobody wants to be like, yeah, I'm 16 and my life's already over. Anyway, well, I'm gonna end this video now because it's getting dark.